Hello and welcome to DFS Coach Talk. Today is Wednesday, April the 6th, 2022. I am Joe Sarvati, affectionately known as Coach, and I am joined by the legend himself, the man with the Yankees garb and all the good advice, Mr. Gundacker. How are you, Gun?
Good morning. I'm adjusting to the early hours, but baseball's got a lot of early slates, so I guess I just need to get used to it for the foreseeable future. So I'm happy to talk some basketball.
Beautiful. Well, I need all the help I can get. This week is so challenging. We all know final week of the NBA, you never know what the hell is going to happen with teams trying to tank, teams trying to make it, teams trying to split the difference. So it's like juggling balls that are on fire. You know what I'm saying? So we can figure this out, though, man. If anybody can do it, we can do it. So we've got a realistically slate of 6 games. Last night with 12 was like, good Lord. So we got 6. It's a nice amount spread out throughout the night. We got tons of back-to-backs, all kinds of things to discuss. And there's going to be value galore and all the fun stuff. So I'm fired up. And for those that are tuning in for the first time on Coach Talk, I'm sorry, number one, because I've grabbed a nasty cold here. So I may sound very scratchy as the day goes, but Gun, you can see Gun on his station Run DFS, and then he's been jumping in on Osimo. He is a man of many talents all over the place, and we're lucky to have him. We also do his live stream on Saturdays. Are we doing Saturday again this week, or do you want to do Sunday? Did you decide?
So I don't know what the NBA schedule is this weekend. I do know that Saturday and Sunday is all day baseball slates.
Yeah.
And the Saturday slate for basketball is 12, 5, 7:30, 8:30, and then it gets really weird for
wait till you look at Sunday.
Yeah, that's
15 crazy. Games.
I don't know what I have a lot of obligations this weekend, so we'll talk.
We'll talk. Yeah, we'll find something. We'll figure something out. But anyway, we're let's get after this slate, 6 gamers, so we can do it in a reasonable period of time. So here we go. I'll set the game stage. We'll figure this one out. First game, 7 p.m. Eastern. It is the Dallas Mavericks at the Detroit Pistons. Dallas is favored by 8.5. It's a 221 total. Dallas has Hardaway and Kleba out. Everybody else is a go. Detroit has Bagley, Joseph, Magruder, and Olynyk out. And as of now, everybody else is in. Again, with everything we go over here, please check with us here in Discord at DFS Coach Talk, because we know there'll be lots of news, maybe even some of it breaks during the show. So we'll break it down for what we have right now. Dallas coming into this game, everybody knows they're the slowest team in the league. So major pace down game for the Pistons. Pistons are 7th in pace. Defensively, Pistons are 12th in pace. So somewhat middle of the pack. So not the fastest game, 221. That's why it's down a little bit. But Dallas is, the 7th best defense. Detroit not so much at 21. So the big question here is, how much run do these guys get? Dallas is still positioning for their spot in the playoffs. Obviously, we know Detroit has already mailed it in. So what's your initial take on this one, Mr. Gunn?
Yeah, so Dallas, it's rare to find some teams really in this final week that have incentive to win, but Dallas can jump the Warriors, and they're trying to hold off the Jazz. Jazz, very winnable game tonight against the Thunder, so they want to win. The Pistons obviously don't want to win, so I'll be looking for the Mavericks to play inspired basketball. I was kind of expecting double-digit point spread here, but the Pistons have been scrappy. A lot of times they catch these double-digit point spreads, and they end up fighting to the bitter end. So I am expecting at least 4 quarters of basketball, and anytime you can get Luka Doncic into the fourth quarter, 60 to 70 fantasy points is an expectation. So the expectation would then be that he is probably going to lead the slate in fantasy score, at least projection-wise. So I do like that. If you like narratives, it is Spencer Dinwiddie's birthday, and he was drafted by the Pistons.
Hey, there you go.
So that'll be fun to see if he gets some inspired buckets on a short slate. Why not? Dwight Powell's intriguing click. You mentioned Maxi Kleber out. They do have Marquise Chris, Davi Spartans, but Dwight Powell has put together some strong games as of late. And a smaller slate, I'm willing to get down there, get a little bit different in the front court. So I do think I'm going to have some Dwight Powell exposure. The Pistons have been a very porous rebounding team as of late. They are not the same team as they were a month ago to 2 months ago, and they certainly also foul quite a bit. So some of these rebound grabbers and guys like Luka get a couple extra free points just by getting some trips to the line. So a lot to like on the Mavs side. Pistons wise, Cade Cunningham's always going to be the backbone of is this team going to be competitive or not. I'm always skittish after we did get Dwayne Casey in OKC. I'll probably never forget that.
That was unbelievable, man.
So I do have trust issues, but if we can look past that and just trust the projection, man, I'm getting 30, 35 minutes as his PT projection tonight. And with his usage rate, that's always going to be chip in a chair territory. Nobody on the Pistons is going to be a priority for me, but because of how small the slate is, they will likely be in the player pool. Saddiq Bey on Fanduel versus his DK price is a pretty drastic contrast, 5,400 versus 7,300. So Saddiq Bey might be one of those guys I get to a lot on Fanduel and almost none on DK. So I think I'm more in like with the Mavericks here than the Pistons, obviously. But because of how short the slate is, I'll have to have a lot of this game in the pool.
I'm with you, man. And it's incredible this last week here how much the prices are different on the salaries on FanDuel and DraftKings. Yeah. I found myself last night. Usually, I have the same core. You'll have some that you switch, but I had like a totally different squad because they're like you said here. $2,000 difference almost on Bay. So when we're talking about these, you really have to look at each site individually. DraftKings and FanDuel are now just ridiculously different, and Yahoo then throws another wrench into it. But I'm with you. Luka seems like the logical pay up here. Gun. I mean, I've got him as the top scorer on the slate. There's no Giannis or Joker or anything, so it seems like there's so much value that's all over the place, and more will open up. It's like do I want to get Luka's 60 or whatever and just move on down the road? So I'm with you, with Luka. I'm starting to, which scares me here, is I'm starting to buy into this Dwight Powell shenanigans. And I was scared all year because, he does throw up some clinkers in there for sure. But he is getting more time. Kleber being out, like you said, definitely helps. So he's a thought. I'm not sold, but he's a thought here. But it really seems like a Luka, and feel comfortable about it and go from there. I'm not as comfortable with Cade Cunningham. I don't trust Coach Casey whatsoever right now. They're trying to lose, and who knows if Cunningham gets full run here. 8.8's a big price to pay. I'd rather pay down where I can get the cheaper Saddiq Bey, specifically on FanDuel. And then, I've really been stung and also took down some stuff with Killian Hayes. So he's sort of a boomer bust guy completely. But here's the thing. The two guys I'd like a quick opinion from you on, because they're the two guys that have my attention here. And that's Isaiah Livers, Braxton Key, and I'm going to throw a third guy in just to make it even more confusing, Carson Edwards. Those three guys seem to be the guys they're getting this extra run with down the stretch this week. Do you think any of those guys are in play for you at their cheap prices? Because 25, 30 minutes are in play for all three of them, in my opinion.
Yeah, Isaiah Livers, Isaiah Stewart, and Braxton Key are probably three guys that I didn't give enough credit to when I was just talking about them. All those guys, especially more on their DK price points under 5K, getting 30 to 30-plus minute projections from this far on. I might tighten the screws on that and come down a little bit. I'm not really there on Carson Edwards. I think we're going to have some guard value later on. Like you said, it's hard to trust what Casey's going to do, especially if they're off the bench. But if I did get to Carson Edwards, he's way cheaper on DK than FanDuel, so probably almost none unless he started and there was specific quotes that he was going to get big run.
Right.
Almost none in that case on FanDuel. 3,500 chip in a chair territory, but we're gonna have some guard value.
We are. And, it's funny because usually if we're torn on a few guys coming down to the buzzer, we're like, who's starting? And this is an early game. We'll get the lineups. But that's not really, and it doesn't matter anymore because, with Casey, he could play a guy 10 minutes there and then say, okay, nice job. Let's go to the bench. So, stay alert, stay awake. I'm probably going to go with some of that value, though, on the Detroit side, just to correlate with Luke on the other side. And hopefully, like you said, Detroit is one of the young teams that are scrapping and trying at least to be competitive. So at least the guys that are out there are going to get you some minutes and they're going to give you some effort. So I'll have some exposure there for sure. All right, let's go to game 2. It's a 7:30 game. Games spread out real nice tonight. Brooklyn Nets, New York Knicks. Brooklyn is favored on the road only by 5. It's a 229.5, which is a pretty good total for a Knicks game, but we know Brooklyn games are high scoring. As far as injury designations, Seth Curry is questionable and James Johnson is questionable. We know we have Dragic and Simmons out. For the Knicks, we've got 2 bench players that could get minutes, so it'd be nice to know if they're going to play or not. Questionable are Grimes and McBride. We already know Noel, Randall, and Rose have shut it down. So, first question I have for you is, I was stunned when I saw this. I try to project lines and everything ahead of time to give me a feel for which direction I want to go. I thought Brooklyn would be like a 9-point favorite or something. And to see 5, first of all, I'm like, okay, does that mean somebody from Brooklyn's sitting or am I just that far off? Were you surprised at that line?
Yeah, I mean, without context, I definitely would have had it a little bit higher. But guys like Kyrie Irving played 40 minutes last night, and it's a back-to-back. So
back-to-back for Brooklyn,
and they also they haven't really been blowing teams out. We referenced that Pistons game where they just won by 7. And there's a couple games where they're on the wrong side here. So, if I had to, without thinking about it, I'd probably price it up to 8, 9. But I understand it, especially with Seth Curry and Dragic, flimsies. So it's not stunning, but
factor.
Yeah.
So what do you think here? What's your first take? I mean, we know that Brooklyn is jockeying for position. So we know that the Knicks are done. So is this Kyrie and Durant, one or the other? I mean, is that a no-brainer, or do you think because it's the second night of a back-to-back, they're not going to be pushed?
No, I think the incentive to win is certainly there for the Nets right now.
Right.
They are 2 games back from the Cavs, and they have the same amount of wins as the Hawks and 1 game above the Hornets. So. You want to at least stay where you're at, not go backwards. The Knicks are done, but I can see them want to play spoiler, a little bit of Subway Series. And anytime you get Kyrie and KD in the Garden, it's always a fun crowd. So right. I do like the thought of targeting Kyrie. I think he's a much better play on FanDuel than DK. Again, another drastic price difference, 86 on FanDuel. It's like daring you not to play him.
Yeah.
Shot volume has been nutty the last few games, 24 and 32 field goal attempts. If we end up losing Seth Curry again, could only imagine that the 20-plus floor and shot attempts remains. And then KD's KD. KD might end up getting pushed down in ownership and people go to Luka, but KD has the range of outcomes to drop 60-plus himself. Drummond got into a little bit of trouble yesterday. He also had a block taken away in the first half, which messed up some of my prize fix lines, but a lot of fouls. 5 fouls in 20 minutes yesterday against the Rockets, and that's back-to-back games with 20 or less minutes. So maybe he's going to start leaving some people's minds for, touching the stove, getting burned. But, hey, in a matchup where they may want his size a little bit more, 25 to 30 minutes, if he keeps his hands to himself, could be coming his way. So I don't mind that. On the Knicks side, you mentioned Julius Randle down. Obi Toppin has kind of stepped into that starting lineup and has put together a couple really usable fantasy point games. I was
Right.
taking a peek at some ownership projections already, and he is projected to be one of the trendier clicks on the slate. And it makes sense. 31, 35 minutes his last two games, 30 plus fantasy points. I do like attacking the Nets in that front court. And I think I'm fine. And those young guys do get a little bit more pep in their step going against some household names like a Kyrie, like a KD, realizing some dreams. So I don't mind that. RJ Barrett's always in play in the absence of Julius Randle. Mitchell Robinson has 30 plus. There's a lot of centers I've noticed so far in the first two games between 5 and 6K. They all have that 30 plus fantasy point potential. So maybe getting those right and finding the guy that maybe kicks through that 40-point ceiling is going to be the key to this slate. But Drummond, Mitchell Robinson, Isaiah Stewart, Isaiah Livers, Braxton Key, Dwight Powell, right now they're all holding hands in my projections. Yeah. So I don't want to be that diluted. So I'm going to have to start narrowing down here as we go, but it's still early.
Yeah, I mean, 2 games in and we have 6 value centers already. How the heck does that make sense?
Exactly.
But it is. It's gonna. A lot of it will be what value center do you pick that's going to come through? So I'm with you there all the way. I think Toppin will end up being one of the popular plays. I mean, there's no doubt since he's basically plugged into Randall's role and got the minutes, he's produced. And, as far as the pace in this game, Brooklyn's 10th, Knicks are only 28. So that's something to look at because it is major pace up for Brooklyn. And on the back-to-back, my only concern here, Gun, is those monster minutes last night, like for Kyrie, and going against a slow-down team like the Knicks. I'm just a little concerned. Again, though, price-wise, salary, you just got to accept it on one spot, not the other. But, I think KD's going to go grossly under-owned here. And he did have a poor game last night, no doubt about it. But, KD, I mean, that's going to roll right off his back. He's the minutes guy that I respect, more of a push for even than Kyrie. So I'm leaning more KD because I think I can make KD and Lucas still work. There's 9 million, value plays here. So I'm really leaning KD here, but I do want the other news to who's out for the Knicks. As far as the Knicks go, RJ Barrett is scoring the ball. His price is fair. And he's 8K on DraftKings, which is acceptable. And he's going to do the majority of their scoring. There's no question about it. The guy that I'm having some temptation with is Emmanuel Quickly. I mean, I think the guy that may prosper minutes-wise down the stretch this last week, because I think he's got a great chance to be a starting point guard for the Knicks for next season. So he's sort of a sneaky play. The problem is he's not cheap. He's 6'1". Nice to get him at a cheap price, but I think he can be somewhat the secret squirrel on the slate there, bud. So Toppin definitely in play. Barrett I've got some interest in. And then, like I say, Quickly as a sleeper, even if it's a GPP, I'm going to have some coverage there. And KD, even though he's expensive, I think he's going to have volume shots, and I think he's, this is almost a 230 total, and I think a lot of that is going to come from him. So pretty fired up to get out of the gate with Luka and KD and then try to hold on for dear life the rest of the night. That will basically be where I'm at.
Hey, it worked last night. Embiid and Jokic won the Millie Maker.
Really?
Yeah, it was a pure, and past those just a bunch of 3-4K punts from who's that on the Thunder and the Blazers. So getting the KD and Luka it works sometimes.
Well, last night it didn't work for me. I went Giannis and Joker, and that stung me right in the where. So
yeah.
But tonight I'm hoping those things change up quite some bit. All right, let's go to game 3. It's the Washington Wizards and Atlanta Hawks. This game, I like this game. Atlanta is a 10.5-point favorite, though. 233.5 total. 111.5 implied for Washington. 122. Nice, healthy number for Atlanta. And then as far as injuries here, we have no Vernon Carey. I know that kills your lineups, but he's actually questionable, so you could still play him if you wanted to. Kyle Kuzma is still doubtful, so I don't know why he's just not listed out. He's not going to play. John Collins out. Danilo Gallinari questionable. He did not play last night with the same tag. Both of these teams played last night, so that's something to take into consideration. Washington is 23rd in pace, Atlanta 19th, which still always shocks me that they play slow. Defensively, these teams absolutely stink. 25th and 26th defensively. So just the defensive rating alone, even though the pace, nothing to write home about, Atlanta's still trying to win some ball games here. And I'm very interested with the news. Is Porzingis going to play? That's number one. He's not listed in any designation, but going on another back-to-back would be surprising to me. But I could be wrong there. So a lot to unwrap here because Atlanta wants to win. And, Washington's another one of those teams that are just awful, but they've continued to fight. So any key plays for you in this game with a decent line as far as the total?
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm pessimistic on Porzingis playing, although he has played the last couple back-to-backs.
Right.
It wasn't but a week ago the team was still logistically, mathematically having a shot at the play-in spot. Well, they don't anymore.
No.
So I would be kind of surprised if Porzingis played, and if he did play, would he play deep minutes? But it could be just speculation, and sometimes that can get us in trouble. Hawks do have incentive to win. We just mentioned they're the same wins in the win column as the Nets. They're trying to hold off the Hornets. They should win this game. The Nets are favored to win their game, so everyone can keep going forward. Satoransky has been getting closer to 20 minutes lately. The last 3 games, Ish Smith has played 28 to 30 minutes. And last night, he was 2 rebounds shy of a triple-double.
Wow.
Smith, yeah, insane. So obviously the pace of the T-Wolves is dramatically different than what he'll be looking at today. But, hey, point guards against the Atlanta Hawks certainly been something that I do like rostering throughout the season. So if we did lose a Porzingis and Ish Smith did play, might be a fun click to get some exposure to a guy who has been really giving us a shot at 30 fantasy points the last 3 games anyway with Porzingis. Right. So I do like the thought of that. If Porzingis didn't play, we saw a big game out of Daniel Gafford last night. I think he would profile pretty well. That's just what we need.
Another value center.
And then on the Hawks side, we're a little bit more solidified in our expectations of Trae Young. I think if we do end up being privy to Luka and KD builds, Trae Young's going to be hard to squeeze in there, but maybe that also makes him a viable or a lucrative thought. I was looking at ownership projections, and it feels like there's only a couple of guys at the high end, and everyone else is just kind of like 20% right now. We'll see if that changes throughout the day, but Trae Young does have a case to be a top 3, top 2 fantasy scorer on the slate. So because of that, he'll be in the mix for me, especially as one of the few teams and few studs incentivized to win tonight. So I don't mind that. If Gallo didn't play, I'd keep running to some Clint Capella exposure, another 6K center that could get you 30. But I do think his ceiling's a little bit higher than some of these other centers. I think 40-plus fantasy points definitely is within the range of possibility. So I don't mind that. And then behind the Young and Capellas, I can get to some Bogdanovich or some Gallo. Probably not as much Gallo when he has started late, or when he has played lately. He's been coming off the bench, so I'm not expecting big minutes on him. But Bogdanovich does have an ability to be the second highest scorer on this team game to game, and probably give us a shot at 30 fantasy points. But uninspiring. And yeah, Wizards are hard to figure out. When I mass enter, though, I will get some KCP and Denny Avdia in the mix, and maybe I stagger between them. But this is a funky game, but a 230-plus total. I do think I'm going to have to sweep through it a few times as the news starts to progress, if news even comes out for this game.
Yeah, and a lot of it's going to have to do with ownership for me, Gun, because if I look at going with those two big boys and Luka and KD, then obviously I'm not going to be able to get Trae Young in there. But if ownership is ridiculously low on Trae and high on those guys, I can pivot easily because I do think Trae's in a fantastic spot here. Even though Ish has been getting more minutes lately, I still feel like it's a position split between he and Sato, and that concerns me at this point. I mean, I prefer Smith, but only if he actually was starting and it's like, okay, I'm expecting him to get 30 minutes, I would feel comfortable. But I still think they split enough minutes. And then obviously we need the news on Porzingis, and not that, we're presuming that he may sit. We have no news of that. But if he plays, I have no interest at 8-4 because I don't think he gets pushed to the max here on a back-to-back again. But if he sits somehow, Daniel Gafford at 4K, then you got to look at that as very serious because he's a stocks guy. He can definitely get there easy at that cheap price. So, not trusting Washington a bunch here. Certainly need to see what the news is. But I'll tell you the guys, I'm really very tired of trying to squeeze in a value Kispert, Hashimura. These guys just never come through. And it's you put them as last man in to make your value, and then they throw a 15 on the board DFS points, and you're like, screw that, I'm sunk. So I'm not going to push the envelope there. And then with Atlanta, though, it's after Trae Young. I'm with you. It's a bit tough because Bogdanovich is pretty cheap, but he's so hit or miss. If he's hot from three, he's going to really crush it for you. And then if he's hot, it takes away from Herter, so that value doesn't help as much. Hunter's been wildly inconsistent. Don't know why anybody would want to play TLC. That's just a crazy play. I mean, I'm starting to like a Kongu a little bit at that cheaper price, but not with all the other cheap centers. If it was a different slate, maybe. And I don't quite trust Capella. So I'd like to be able to find a way to get Trae in there. And, we'll see what the news is on the other side. But this, even though it's a 233.5 total, which, by the way, is the biggest total on the board, I'm just not crazy about this game. I don't have a lot of trust in it,
Yeah.
All right. Let's hit the next one. Before we do, we're halfway through. I do want to say, first of all, I want to thank Gundacker again for being here. Gun, where can they find you and your stuff? And what do you want? Go ahead and throw some stuff in there. I'm sure people are interested.
Yeah. Twitter.com/Gundacker. Stay connected. YouTube.com/Gundacker. And then a couple times a week, I'm on the Osmo channel talking NBA or baseball. I'm a man of many sports.
Yeah, definitely. And hopefully, we'll keep doing our collabs, I hope, as we go through with basketball and baseball. I do baseball for Coach Talk as well. You can find us at dfscoachtalk.com. You see the scroll across the bottom as well. We would love to have you join us. We have some fantastic offers right now for the NBA season. We have also an NBA playoffs, MLB PGA combo that goes through June 19th, and very affordable. And you get everything we've got here at Coach Talk. We collab with some awesome folks like Gunn and some different people throughout our sports. And if you want to catch us, what we do is we put out a DFS pod every day. We also put out a prize picks pod with our picks. And then we are adding stuff as the day goes on in Discord, including releasing more prize picks plays for our members. So dfscoachtalk.com is where you can find it. Also, the presenting sponsor of this podcast is Prize Picks. If you would like to give a shot at Prize Picks, this is the time. Maybe you've been waiting because baseball starts tomorrow. Go to prizepicks.com, sign up with the promo code Coach Talk, all one word, no space, and they will match you all the way up to $100, dollar for dollar, and it goes right straight into your account once you are active. So prizepicks.com, promo code Coach Todd. All right, we've got 3 games left. We're going to hit these 3. 8 o'clock game also here, Boston Celtics, Chicago Bulls. This game at least has some interest here in some 2 teams caring about playoffs and getting ready for playoffs. It is Boston by 7.5 on the road, only a 222 total, 114.75 implied for Boston, 107.25 for the Chicago Bulls. A lot of probable tags here for Boston. Brown, Horford, and Tatum. I'm counting them all in. Probable basically means playing to me. And then the guys that are out are Morgan, Stauskas, and Robert Williams. Haven't said Stauskas in a while. Chicago, on the other hand, the big news in this game will be Zach LaVine. He is questionable. He's been that tag quite a bit, and sometimes he plays, sometimes he doesn't. So we need to follow that closely. Matt Thomas is probable, and Lonzo Ball was announced is out for the rest of the season. Playoffs, the whole shenanigans here. Not looking good for Lonzo. Boston is on the first night of a back-to-back. Chicago on the second night. So that needs to be in consideration. Neither team plays very fast. Boston 24, Chicago 16. We all know that Boston has been by far the best defensive team for the last 2 or 3 months. They are first in the league overall. Chicago is that's their Achilles heel. They are all the way down to 22nd defensively. So the big question here, Gun, does the game stay close long enough? Does it matter for these 2 teams? Do they fire out their guys? It'd be nice to get 30-some minutes for some guys. Is this where you think we'll see it?
We should. The Celtics are in the hunt for really the 1 seed, but they are neck and neck with the Bucks. And the fun thing about that is they play the Bucks tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that will pretty much establish the 2 seed, which will answer some questions for them. But they will certainly have home court advantage. Actually, looking at it, they have the same amount of wins as the Bucks and the 76ers. So there's a lot of questions in that 2 to 4 spot.
Well, all 3 of them have the identical record. So there you go.
So the Celtics certainly want to separate themselves, get some dubs. And I think their path to success today, whether or not LaVine plays or not, would be staging the difficulty levels of them winning this game. They are without Robert Williams. That does take a little hit to their defensive rating. Not massive. They're still a good defense, but it is something to be cognitive of. We have seen a couple centers bleed through lately with some solid games. Yesterday, Vucevic, very poor shooting day. I kind of thought that he might pick up some slack in the absence of LaVine. He had 19 shots. He made 3 of them. You don't see centers shoot to 15% on 10-plus shots, but that's what we had yesterday. So maybe
that hurts.
Next day progression. But if they strategically held LaVine out last night for him to play tonight, so they can be all hands on deck to go to a battle tonight, then I do think the Bulls have a stronger chance to stay competitive. However, it's still an uphill battle back to back for everyone else against a ridiculously strong Celtics team and a strong Celtics defense. So I don't have a lot of high hopes and aspirations on the Bulls. I will say that the price point on LaVine on FanDuel 7,100 and even 7,600 on DK, I can squeeze 40 plus fantasy points out of that. And that might have a little bit more purpose on a slate this small and condensed versus a slate like last night at that price point. So I'd be in on that. I would also be in on that DeRozan price point at 86 versus the 93 on FanDuel. I could certainly see 40 plus. I'm essentially always getting the same projection on LaVine, DeRozan, Vooch, and I usually put them all in a player group for optimization purposes, and usually kind of limit to 1 of the 3 or 2 of the 3, depending on the slate. And that's probably the same strategy I'm going to handle today. Caruso, every slate he's going to project well and look well, but it seems like when I play him, he gets in a lot of foul trouble. And
he killed me last night, man. He killed me. He's dead to me, guys. Dead to me.
Yeah, him, DeSumo, Kobe White. And unfortunately for us, their projections are going to spike even more if Levine ends up sitting again. What we did see is Patrick Williams start, I believe, yesterday.
He had a good game.
Yeah. And on the Celtics side, I think they're all in play. Brown and Tatum, I kind of stagger between the two. I probably don't get more than one of those guys in the same lineup. But Horford on FanDuel, I can get behind 30-plus fantasy points. I'll take it. And then Marcus Smart on FanDuel. His defensive peripherals can add up quicker on a FanDuel. And you mentioned Prize Picks. They're scoring as well, the plus threes. He's averaging almost 2 steals a game. So there's a couple of clicks here. I'm not expecting the world. I'm expecting the Celtics to kind of set the tone here. So I probably don't get to more than two players from either team in lineups. But because of how small the slate is, I'm going to have some exposure in my builds today.
Yeah, this is the trickiest game on the slate for me. And it's really for two particular reasons. One, you've got the problem is you've got multiple guys from each team that can do well, but they're very expensive. So you have to limit your exposure here. I mean, yeah, sure, it'd be nice to be able to roster Brown, Tatum, Caruso, Vuk, and Levine if he plays. I think Levine plays. I think
I just got a note. He said he's probable.
Yeah, I figured he was sitting yesterday to play today. So there's 5 guys, all fairly expensive. I guess Levine you can consider cheaper, but the other 4 super expensive. And it's one of those things where you cannibalize each other. I mean, you can't. You're not going to have 3 guys from the same team with 72 fantasy points. So it's just I prefer going elsewhere. But on the flip side, the thing that concerns me is there is motivation to win and play well in this game. So you could get 35, 38, 39 minutes from some of these guys. And that's hard to run away from with the talent on a lot of those guys. Because, all 5 of the guys I mentioned are 70-point DFS ceilings. And, that's the killer is how do you let that all go? But where do you find the salary to do it? Whereas you've got Luka pretty much in a solo act. You've got, KD with just one guy on the other side. Trae Young's sort of a solo act anymore. So it's hard to, for me to put a lot of dollars into this game. But I think it'll be pretty well owned because I think a lot of people see this as the feature game, 2 teams that matter that are going forward. And I think they're going to force some players in. So this may be one of those I can get pretty contrarian at times, but I think if I go with anybody in this game, I'm going to look more for value, like a Marcus Smart, because like you said, stocks and those kind of things. Maybe Al Horford, he's playing better, getting a few more rebounds and everything with Williams out. Looking for a few spots where I don't have to spend up and then pray that 1 or 2 guys out of the 5 big boys in this game are the ones that have the peak game. Because even if you break it down defensively, DRPM and look at position to position and defensively, there's pluses and minuses all over the board here. So it is a tough game to figure. And that for that reason, I don't think I'm going to spend a bunch of my salary here, whether that be right or wrong,
Yeah, the supplementary shots definitely make more sense. Horford and Smart, I agree with.
I hope. And I'm not even going to mention the name of Alex Caruso. You're in trouble, man. All right, we go to the last 2 games. It's a 9 o'clock and a 10 o'clock. So can't wait to talk about that 10 o'clock game with you. Yeah. Who the hell knows what's going to happen there? We need the Swami guy, with the crystal ball, Chris Berman. Let's bring him in. We need something. Oklahoma City Thunder, Utah Jazz is the 9 o'clock game. Small spread here, Gun. 17.5, sir. 220.5 total. So you have a monstrosity of a line with the second lowest total. Wait a minute. It is the lowest total. How can you have the biggest spread between 2 teams and the lowest total on the slate? I don't know if I've ever seen that before. Anyway, the Thunder are 101.5 implied, Jazz 119. What a disastrous possibilities of things that could happen in this game with those lines. As far as in and out in this silly game here, Trey Mann, questionable. That is important. Kenrich Williams is out. We already know a bunch of guys have been out for the year. For Utah, Trent Forrest is out. So God only knows what the hell is going to happen here. I'm so glad I have you on the show today. I'll give you some numbers. Not that these really matter because it's all different guys, but both teams are on the second night of a back-to-back. That, I guess, matters. But the Thunder 13th in pace, Utah 22nd, Oklahoma City 15th, Utah 12th. So average D, but again, it's all different players. So let's tackle some of these guys and some of these wonderful pronunciations. I want to buy a vowel for Mr. Kalitizakis or whatever. And I don't know, Jalen Horde monster game. Dude, I feel like I need a drink and it's only the morning. What are you going to do with this game?
Yeah. This is it's going to come down to what the Thunder actually put out as their starting lineup tonight. They signed 2 guys from their G League squad to 10 days to finish out the season. And they were facing the Blazers yesterday. So Blazers, Thunder, Pistons, Magic. These are all teams that are not only not competitive, but you can see that they're not trying to hide the fact that they want to lose. And
they want more ping pong balls. That's all there is to it.
100%. And Alexei Pokusevsky was the guy that was after our own heart yesterday before the slate developed. And then he ended up, not playing because of those guys. And I think I was listening to Adam Scherer this morning, and he mentioned that he had a theory that maybe since this game with Pokusevsky, they probably don't win anyway. Maybe he played this one, and maybe yesterday they were just trying to put out the worst lineup they could. And would you believe it? They won anyway against that Blazers team. I think they had a 17-point deficit that they overcame
in the fourth quarter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I could see the Thunder putting back a more normal lineup that did feature Pokusevsky. One of the constants between the last couple of games for them, however, has been Jalen Horde, who apparently is Shaquille O'Neal, the second coming. He played 46 minutes last night, 21 rebounds, 24 points, just insane game out of him. So, from this far out, it's just complete speculation on what the Thunder want to do, who they'll play, and it's just going to have to be us being on our toes as the news comes out, and perhaps late swapping into some stuff. We're going to be heavily limited with those price points because the main event game doesn't really offer similar price points to swap into. So it is an unfortunate circumstance there, but it could be lucrative in tournaments if you do allow yourself some flexibility to make some of those decisions. And then the Utah Jazz, even though that they need to win, need is a strong word, but the incentive for the Jazz to win is there. They could logistically take a top 4 seed if a Mavericks team slip backwards, and if the Jazz could grab a top 4 seed, grab home court advantage in the playoffs, that would be very meaningful. Jazz and the Nuggets are in position to do that here. So there's an incentive to win. I guess if the Mavs were to handle their business in time for this game to start, I think if the Mavs win, the chances of the Jazz going forward into a top 4 seed dampen a little bit, although they would like to stay above the Nuggets no matter what. But I wouldn't be stunned if we had some rest here for the Jazz. I'd almost expect a guy like Mike Conley to not play just because it is a back-to-back, and that'll probably catapult Jordan Clarkson into projections and higher models. And then, it's the Thunder. You could essentially you could start Whiteside over Gobert and probably still be 17-point favorites. So I wouldn't be stunned if we get a wonky Utah Jazz lineup from Quinn Snyder as he tries to pick his spots for rest. So I'd be looking for potential rest on a Conley, a Bojan, or a Gobert, somebody like that. And I'm kind of I'd almost fully assume right now that Mike Conley doesn't play.
Yeah, I don't think Conley plays either. And I don't know if we may see all kinds of weird wonky lineups here. And the tough part is we're probably not going to know that at lock for sure. It's 2 hours after lock. So if you have the stomach to do some late swap and you can figure out maybe a 2v2 swapping between this game and the late game, I mean, go for it. But it could be a gigantic risk reward thing, regarding who you put in there. Did you happen to catch our Coach Talk pod yesterday?
I did not.
Jalen Horde was my number one pick of the day, lock washer, 100%. I'm lying.
Oh, I was. It's like
I
nice.
was just joking.
I mean, so like the other game, like the wins that he got the game prior, he looked all right. Or not the Phoenix game, but the Detroit game where he went 40 minutes. He 20 and 11 or 11 and 20. Whichever one look at. So like it would have been like crazy to see him. And in the Millie Maker yesterday on DK, he got the 28% ownership.
Nice.
So like that's not nothing. So it wouldn't have been like a crazy landing spot. But I mean, in 4 games this season, his DraftKings results are 2.5 fantasy points, 46, 9.5, 61. So it's just an unpredictable situation when it comes to minutes for these Thunder players. But if he ends up in the starting lineup again tonight, even against a tougher perceptual matchup, minutes equal money, 40 plus minutes at 5K, I'd probably just have to roster you against a Great Wall of China.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at him yesterday. I wish I would have said that on the show, but I did not have the courage to do it. But he's in play for me. You got to look at him. I mean, it's not points chasing. It's just being realistic here. His price and what he's capable of doing, you got to take a look at. But I'd say make sure you're in position to do a little swapping, though, for without question. I'm interested to know, though, if Trey Mann's going to play, because that shuffles the deck big time, because he probably gets the most shots up for them tonight, in my opinion, if he's in there. So that's news I'm going to be watching closely. And then with Conley out, Clarkson's been so inconsistent this year. Generally, it makes me want to go to Mitchell. But how long does Mitchell play? Does it blow out and he sits the second half? Lots of risk here. You've got to you got to do this one very gently and be ready to swap because it is wide open. And speaking of that, let's hit this last game because there's a lot of conjecture on what's going to happen with these lineups tonight. You have the Phoenix Suns and LA Clippers. Phoenix is coming into this game, after knocking the Lakers out, feeling good about themselves, back to back. Everything clinched from beginning to end. So the $1 million question will be who, do they play guys? And you've got, according to Vegas, they don't think they do because Clippers are a 1-point favorite, Gun. Mm-hmm. It's a 226.5 total, 112.75 implied for Phoenix, 113.75 for the Clippers. As far as designations, as we sit here, because Phoenix has not released theirs yet. They just have Kaminsky and Saric out, but believe me, there's going to be a lot more news than that. And then for the Clippers, for some reason, why does it say Norman Powell questionable? Why would I guess they're going to try to use him for the playoffs, maybe get him a few minutes. I don't know, but we need to follow that. We know Kawhi and Preston are out. So I guess the only place to start this is, and it's huge because there could be massively great plays here, like Cameron Payne, etc. Paul can't play in this game, can he? Is Chris Paul going to play? I'm counting him out, even though he has 0 designation so far. And I just don't know. I think Monty might just, flush the old toilet here and say, okay, you guys, sit down. It's Cam Johnson, JaVale McGee, Cameron Payne, Shamet, Torrey Craig. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised he throws those 5 out there. What do you think? Am I digging too deep here?
No, it makes sense. The Suns have nothing to play for. They're locked in number 1 seed. I mean, this is the fruits of your labor. The pushback is they did seem to be interested in getting Chris Paul's conditioning up. They rested 3 stars against the Thunder: Jay Crowder, DeAndre Ayton, and Devin Booker. And Chris Paul played that game, and I assumed they were trying to get Chris Paul's win back up. Maybe he wanted to play against his old team. Well, if that's the case here, it's old team Clippers back in LA. Maybe that happens. But I definitely am expecting at least 3 starters, if not all of them, to rest here on a back-to-back. I don't know. Hopefully that news comes out early enough. And then, all the same, the Clippers are locked into where they're at. So neither team is going forward or backward here.
No.
I do know that the Suns, I guess they clinched the last night. They set a franchise record for wins in a season.
Yeah, they busted every mark humanly possible. So they absolutely have 0.0 to play for. Yeah.
So, I mean, they could add to the wins record to make it that much harder to break if that's a thing. But yeah, I think from a coaching standpoint, you certainly would like to be cautious with your minutes here. And the Suns, they'll have a little bit of a break when the playoff begins anyway, as the play-in tournament develops and whatnot. So I think it's more of just keeping these guys healthy. And Chris Paul is certainly somebody that has had some untimely injuries. So this could be anything from 2 full-strength teams to 2 punt teams. I would say if the Clippers were resting guys, I feel like there's a good chance we would have known that by now. Or at least had some guys on the injury report for rest. Ty Lue's been pretty tight about that, and he has been open about wanting their team to build some chemistry with Paul George, missing a big chunk of time. So I could see the Clip. I'm more likely to expect the Clippers to play full strength. As far as full minutes, though, that's up in the air. So yeah, this is one of the more annoying night slates because it absolutely feels like the Suns would not be at 100% when it comes to who's playing tonight, and then you really just don't know what to expect for Clippers minutes. So I'm not likely to get to this game unless we get really definitive news early in the day, and I'm hopeful that we would at least from the Suns to let us know that a Booker or a Paul would be out because, like you said, Cameron Payne would project extremely well, and then. I don't know if DeAndre Ayton's sad again. It seems like Javal McGee is extremely hit or miss as the chalk center of the day.
Oh, he killed me the other night, man. He killed me. He's just not getting minutes. Like I think you called it maybe on our pod together. He's never playing over 20 minutes no matter what. It's weird. I don't.
Yeah, it's very close to low 20s. And then ironically, last night against the Lakers, he gets just 16 minutes and absolutely kills it. So it makes no sense.
Well, he always gets the points per minute, but when you get a guy playing 18 minutes, you're like, come on, man. You can't really take a center spot for that. It's frustrating, but I'm with you. I mean, let's just see what they have to say here. I think it's that news, I think we'll have news on this one earlier than some of the other ones,
I'm hopeful. Yes.
Yeah. What about Paul George though? That's the diamond here that if you save that spot, it's super, super risky because there's probably not going to be anywhere to switch to. But I did read the same thing as you did. They want him to get minutes, get chemistry, get his wind. He could murder this game.
Yeah, 20-plus shot attempts in 30 minutes is a very real expectation of his usage when he's on the court, sky high. So he does have a potential to be one of those pesky late-night hammers. Does have 50-plus fantasy point potential. So he's absolutely in play, especially if, much like we've discussed so far, the field becomes pessimistic of this game having full board minutes, full board starters, stuff like that. Yeah. So in deep field tournaments, if he's going to carry single-digit ownership, sure, take a shot or two. Pre-flop, if I had to rank the studs, though, he's probably in the back of the pack here with the aforementioned Lukas, Trae Youngs, KDs, Kyries, stuff like that.
They're certainly safer, but you could possibly get such low ownership on them because everybody's fear of risk there,
Right.
But just a thought. I mean, that's why we got to watch ownership, see where we can get the best leverage because that's the difference. I'm with you. I mean, everybody's going to feel super confident on Luka and Kyrie and KD, but I think they're going to start wondering a little bit more on guys like, is Trae going to be owned enough? Is Paul George going to be owned enough? Maybe even a sneaky Donovan Mitchell. So there are some pivots I think that you can make here that could be really sharp.
Yeah, I agree.
That is it. All right, man. We got it. 6 up seems like nothing for us. We've been tackling these monster slates. It seems like a layup now. So Well, fantastic to have you on here, Gun. Love doing shows with you, and hopefully we can get together sometime this weekend. We could do some hoops here in the playoffs. The playoffs to me are the best time to play DFS because everybody's going all out every game. The rotations are shortened. You know what to expect. There's none of these crazy 10-day folks jumping in and out. And what a roller coaster year between COVID and all guys in and out. It has been the craziest regular season of the NBA that I've ever remembered, let alone DFS wise. And now we should get some normalcy and for the playoffs. So let's try to crush these slates up until Sunday with some of the edge that we talked about today. And then you and I can get together for some NBA playoff smashing here and get that across the line. So any final stuff from you, sir?
No, it's a pleasure as always, chat. You guys hit that thumbs up for the coach. Leave a comment and share this video, man. Get them subs up.
We appreciate that, and definitely catch Guns, live stream every day and his prize picks. You got a really stud there in Josh, man. He knows his stuff. So check their stuff out. A lot of people have been DMing me and sending me info saying, they're watching Gun and watching us at Coach Talk, sort of putting that information together, and they've been very successful. So we encourage you to do that, and then they'll catch you today on Awesemo too. You're right. You're on there live before lock.
Yeah, yep. Right before lock today. That's going to be chaos.
Nice. Well, I'll be listening for these ones that we try to figure out. Hopefully those plays are in there. So thanks again, Gun. Have fun, and we'll see you all again next time when we look to crush it in NBA DFS here at Coach Talk.